Welcome to Muhammad's Mosque, number 35, brothers and sisters. All praises due to Allah. We thank you for coming. We thank you for sharing some of your time and of your talents to be with us this afternoon. Just momentarily, we will hear from Mother Tynetta Muhammad during this session, which is titled the Question and Answer Period. Now, brothers and sisters, this session is aimed, so as you know, the minister said that we have entered into a dark period. And it will get darker, and as we see the news and as we witness events throughout the world, it is getting darker and darker each and every day. We need to know, how do we escape the wrath of our open enemy? How do we get through these turbulent times? And how are we going to get through the time and when the Honorable Minister Farrakhan is with his Lord receiving the next lesson so that he may come back and conquer this wilderness in which we were sold as slaves? So Minister Farrakhan, as we know, to those of us who listen and follow him, will be gone and will be absent from among us according to the scriptures for a time, as the teachings in the 12th chapter of the book of Revelations teaches us that this woman would be gone for about 1,200 days, which adds up to about approximately 3.5 years. That's right. And so while the minister is gone, we need to know, how do we maneuver? How are we able to get to the other side? Because don't you want to see the victory of the apostle? Yes, sir. Don't you want to live through the fall of a world so that we may practice Islam uninhibited by our open enemy, and that Minister Farrakhan will find faith on his return? I want to be in that number. How about you? All praises due to Allah. And so, brothers and sisters, we are so happy and proud, and we pray that the questions that we give Mother Tynetta, that they are questions, relevant to the time in which we're in and how do we get through. Because, of course, Mother Tynetta had lived through the fall of the nation. She lived through those tremendous dark times in 1975, and so she can share with us, because the ingredients that were there in 1975 will be when the Honorable Minister Farrakhan leaves us. I said some of the ingredients, because all tests are not the same. That's right. All right? But Minister Farrakhan said that we would be able to get through if we hear and if we obey. That's right. You remember those 5 foolish virgins and the 5 wise virgins. Why did not the 5 foolish virgins able to benefit? And when the bridegroom showed up, they were not there. And then when the bridegroom showed, and those virgins that had kept the faith, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan said that could mean that those that kept the faith, those virgins that received the bridegroom when he came in a dark hour, it was those who received the message, obeyed the message, and followed through. But those foolish virgins were those during the time when the bridegroom had went away. They squandered their spiritual wealth, and they were not cognizant, and they did not follow through the principles that were given to us by the servant of God when he was in our midst. And so we don't want to be like that. We want to be those who pass the test. Yes, and so, brothers and sisters, I'm so happy and honored to host this occasion. This will be DVD'd, and it will be high-speed duplicated at the end of this session in approximately 30 minutes. So you may get it, take it and study it, so we can have something to really feed on during these dark hours and times in which we live. So brothers and sisters, at this time, as you know, to my right and to your left, we have the great minister from Mosque number 6 in Baltimore, Maryland, our brother Minister Carlos Muhammad. He's here with us this afternoon. All praises due to Allah. Of course, I would have Brother Minister come up and say a few words, but I just do not know what time Mother is going to come down. So I'm trying to, the sisters look like they are about to, Mother Tynetta is about to come before us. So brothers and sisters, if we can take our seats, and we can prepare for Mother Tynetta to come and give us what needs to be given. So at this time, let us receive our mother, Mother Tynetta Muhammad. All praises due to Allah. Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Mother Tynetta Muhammad. Mother Tynetta Muhammad, we recognize that your birth, the anniversary of your birth is coming, and Sister Protocol would like to present to you something, a token of our appreciation, Mother. You know, so Sister Protocol, Melody would like to present you with something, Mother Tynetta.
All right. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. The mosques in all the different areas, Atlantic City, Newark, Philadelphia, Wilmington, of course. Who else I'm leaving out? Chester, I'm sorry. Or Harrisburg. Okay, wanted just to present you with this love offering, and we really thank and appreciate you for being here.
Thank you so much.
All praises due to Allah.
So we will not waste any time. We're going to get down to business, right?
Yes.
All right. First of all, thank you so very much for the love offering. And I know already that it comes from the heart. So may Allah bless you who are thinking from the heart. In the most holy name of Allah, the all-wise, true, and living God, to whom praise is due forever, for coming to us, a poor, downtrodden people who were considered to be no people at all. That God thought enough of us to reveal the mystery of Himself and awaken us to the power within, so that we can also become once again in the circle of the gods. That great one is Master Farad Muhammad, the great Mahdi. And we forever thank him for coming and searching among us into the hells of and wilderness of North America until he found one who would be made into a Messiah. The Messiah that the world has been looking for. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we forever thank the honorable Elijah Muhammad for his profound love for us, that he would choose another in the classroom of God to take us further on this journey until we come safely to the other side. And he would not say, "Look at what I have done."
That's right. That's right.
He would say, "Look at what Allah has done."
Yes, ma'am.
And that is our humble brother, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. In their holy and wonderful names, I greet you once again in the greetings of peace and paradise. Assalamu alaikum. I want to start out, brothers and sisters, knowing that you have a lot of questions that I will not be able to answer. But I will call on my God and your God and pray that He will guide us to find some resolution to some of the thoughts and problems that we may be having. As I was resting for a few moments upstairs, waiting for this hour, I recalled that it was entitled Questions and Answers. So right away, that puts us into our lessons.
That's right. That's right.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, a wise God came asking questions. That's Master Farad Muhammad. And it's all summed up in our manual that we call the Supreme Wisdom, which represents questions and answers. So as we ask questions, we give an answer. If we continue to ask questions, Allah will take us deeper and deeper into the answer and the solution that we have been waiting for. But if we are not of an inquiring mind, if we do not search deeply the root of the assignment that was given to us, then we will stay mediocre.
That's right.
We will remain common. And none of you who are in this room today, and none of the membership of the Nation of Islam is mediocre.
Okay. That's right.
Each one was chosen by God. No matter how many mistakes we make, we are the material that God is working with. And from nothing, if we are obedient and follow and remain in our assignment, He will make us the wonder people of the world. Because in our head is a knowledge that is beyond their time.
Okay.
We are in a moment to demonstrate whether or not we have understood over a 72 period since his departure in 1934. The Honorable Minister Farrakhan gave us several lectures several years ago as we were approaching the year 2000, in giving us what he approximated to be the timeline that would bring us into a period where the old world power would be broken. We are living to testify that his power is being broken on land and on sea, in their government, in every aspect of climatic changes, which is directly, fundamentally coming from the scientists of our nation. That is making it hot where it should be cool, making it cool where it should be hot. These are all the signs of an ecological change. They call it earth changes, and they're happening at such a rapid pace that we can hardly keep up with it. One morning we hear bushfires are going on in California, then they're in Arizona, now they're in New Mexico. Right?
Yes, sir.
That's a sweep. In Texas,
Yes, yes.
you know, it looks like some of the burning and some of the earthquakes and everything that points to the 4 great judgments is going from west to east.
Yes, that's right.
And then it reverses itself before we finish studying one set of disasters from east to west. And then from south to north. And then the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to prepare for chunks of ice breaking down from the polar caps, and that they would start entering into the water and raise the water level.
Wow.
And when the water levels would rise, he said there would be great tidal waves that would hit all of the coastal areas. We're living in the time where we're seeing the breaking of the power and the confusion in this government. And Katrina is a prime example.
Yes.
So when the Honorable Minister Farrakhan decided to take a delegation to Cuba recently, that delegation primarily was designed for disaster preparedness, knowing that these hurricane blasts that we've already experienced are going to get worse and worse and worse. So, as I climax or come to a conclusion of this opening, only to leave way for your giant questions that I'm calling on the God to help me to answer. If I don't know the answer, one of you do. One of these brilliant brothers and sisters knows the answers. So we're working together collectively. And we're going to ask Almighty God Allah to help us to find the answers. He said, as long as we stay in our assignment,
Okay.
many of the more difficult parts of the lesson assignment, like the problem book,
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
he said, you just read it over and over and over. And he said, and then suddenly it will happen that you will get the answer. So the problem book in particular is more difficult perhaps than the other parts of our lesson assignment. But I was told from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and reconfirmed again to the minister that our little babies, our little children, will rise up and say, oh, you're wondering what that answer is? Oh, this is the answer. Blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
Because they are the generation of the Messiah.
Wow.
They have come into the earth as soldiers. And they are more conscious, more knowledgeable about the negative side because they have gone through it through our neglect of the previous generations, yes? And now we are reaping the consequences. But look at it from the brighter side. They were prepared to go into the depth of hell so that they could come out of hell fully prepared to battle with a Satan that lives above the ground. And that is what we're looking at in our young people. Okay? So now, I thought about that. This assignment on us is questions and answers. Questions and answers starts out with all of the students that we represent, trying to get through this very dark period in time. We do have another part of our presentation today that I hope will bring you some bit of hope and some bit of joy. But in this first part, questions and answers, if you're ready to shoot me, shoot at me. Wait a minute. I better put on my buckler and my shield. I don't want any crack shots or even rubber bullets, please. But the bullets of your minds, being prepared to go into battle. And the questions that may be on your mind that Allah may have blessed you, all right, to put in thought, have been presented to me in part. When I arrived, they gave me a paper that was reflective of some of the questions. Some, I know that there's more. Some of the questions. So we're going to, by permission, Brother Minister Robert.
Yes, ma'am.
We may shorten or answer them as quickly as we can because of the second part, which is extremely important, where we will be taken up to the upper room, you know? And the tongues of fire came down, and we started shouting and testifying. So I believe, honestly, that this is the period of our examination before Almighty God Allah. And to see if we have understood what we have been given to study for 70 plus years. And that this examination is being held and conducted by the Almighty Himself. And that as in rote, we recite it over and over. You come in, every believer, every new convert comes in asking questions and getting the answers. So this could be part of our examination. To see if we are fit for positions awaiting us in the new world. And there are no big I's or little U's. Because everybody what? Is on the same assignment.
Yes,
That's right.
So as each student is on the same assignment, then Allah is constantly revealing to you, through your heart, through your mind, through your spirit, information that you probably never ever received before. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we're on the road, traveling with the wise man.
Yes, absolutely.
We're on the road where we cannot doubt that we have received the truth. We're on that road where sometimes questions can be aggravating, but it all depends on the spirit and the mind of the person asking the question. Because they questioned Moses for alternative reasons.
Oh.
Is that true? They questioned him to the degree that they all almost lost it. And the Quran reminds us, do not ask questions about those things that may give you trouble if you ask them ahead of the time that God reveals the answer. And many people became disbelievers thereat because they wanted a quick answer. But the quick answer was really within themselves. But they didn't have patience to cultivate the mind and the thinking of God, because when you're walking with God, you have to be very careful how you even frame your thought.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mother.
Yes, yes. So as we move forward with these questions and any other questions that you may have, would you like me, Brother Robert, to ask all of them at one time and go down the questions?
However you desire, Mother Tynetta.
All right, all right. Here is a list of 17 questions for review and consideration. Thank you. For consideration. All right. The question here from some believer, from somebody: what is the blessing of standing in the house that DuPont built and defeating them in their own house? That's one question. What is the blessing of reading the Quran 52 times a year? When Minister Farrakhan departs from us, how can we avoid the chaos and confusion of his departure? 4. What process would you give to the MGT and GCC in utilizing one of the units to become self-sufficient? That's interesting. We worked with the MGT earlier,
Yes.
and some of these questions were raised and discussed without my reading the questions and answers. What process would you give to the MGT? I just said that. Would you elaborate on the importance of the 7 units? Oh my. As they relate to our promise from Master Farad Muhammad, problem number 13. Can I hear a witness in the house from the MGT? So see, I'm sorry, we got a head start. The women went in front. So that we could come up to the level of the second part of our day. As one who has intimate knowledge of the years just preceding the departure of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, what, if any, parallels do you see now and would share with us? 7. In the original instructions to the laborers in the Supreme Wisdom, they are numbered 1 to 7, then 9 to 12. The number 8 is skipped. Do you know why? Has the messenger ever contacted you since he left? 1975. 70 years extension of time. Did this extension start 1930, 1934, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad left? And what are signs of the end of the extension of time? That was sort of like in my intro. So, what aspect of the wives of Prophet Muhammad have you lived or fulfilled? Were you assigned specific books to read to better prepare you for your assignment? If so, how many? Would you share the titles of these books? 12. Will your articles in the final call be put in a book form? 13. Would the 10th system, the brain, a curriculum guide for the Nation of Islam, be put in a book form? 14. You have referred to the butterfly to describe life and transformation. Would you comment on why such a wonderful insect would, after such a tremendous metamorphosis, only be given a 2 to 4 week lifespan? 15. Approximately a year ago, you had a series of articles that was entitled, "They Think That I," and this is the words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the messenger, "am going to die." They think that I'm going to die. Would you describe that time period and the relevance it has for this time? 16. When the minister departs, the dropping of the leaflets, the angels, I guess he means it's not angles, right? Angels, on the corners, the Muslim sons helping us and also teaching in 15-minute shifts. Does this take place during the departure? 17. Prior to the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March, a sister had a vision of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He told her he would be completely in charge that day. What does this mean to you? Okay, those were very deep, analytical questions for a student. But basically, brothers and sisters, in these questions, it seems that you are expecting that I might have some of the answers because of my relevance and living during the time of the 44-year period of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching to us. And that perhaps I might have an on-site picture of what did take place and how basically that compares or might parallel the history of Minister Farrakhan in the time of his departure as he has explained it to us. It's interesting, brothers and sisters, when I opened my Quran yesterday in preparation for this morning, I opened to the 24th surah, which of course we spoke about this earlier this morning, that the verse that is inscribed in Arabic around the dome of Mosque Maryam is exactly the verse of light, and it is 35. Are you aware of that? Everybody here knows that?
Yes.
Okay. And we spoke about it as being a surah that was made of God, though prophesying using the name of God to shield their dirty religion. That's exactly what they're doing. Now they're being called by their own insiders criminals.
That's right.
So if they are being made into the criminals, that means that their game is over and the cover is being pulled off. So that all works within the confines of the breaking of their power from within. So there's nothing that we as Muslims have to do but be prepared ourselves to pass through the examination and the fire and the dark time. So the more that we prepare ourselves physically, mentally, and spiritually, that is really all that we have to be about right now. Because to engage in politics is not necessarily recommended, but the Honorable Minister Farrakhan has engaged every level, class of the society.
That's right.
So that nobody will say, well, if we knew better, we could have done better.
That's right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But we never heard from you.
Right.
And if he didn't go into the churches, they would say the same. They'll say, well, we didn't know any better. We were teaching the theology of the Christian religion the way they taught us, the way they licensed us, but we never knew you because you never came to our houses. You see that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And then if he had not engaged the Black Caucus and other politicians, you see, or civil rights leaders and movements, right? Then they would say the same. When the truth is made plain. And when the truth is made plain, the Quran says that is what they will say. Each one with their leader will be scrambling for brownie points that they did so well and this and that. And each one will come with their leader and they would be turned down. But then there'd be no excuses. They'll say, did not messengers come to you from among your own people and tell you of this meeting, of this day of yours? See? So there's be no excuses. And for us, who were given this exalted truth, or exalted truth, what excuses will we come up with? When we were being made into the first-class leaders that will take over the rule that our enemy has imposed upon us in wickedness, we are being prepared in righteousness. So to put a clean glass,
That's right.
okay, against a muddy or dirty glass. So we are so blessed, brothers and sisters, to be here. And forgive me for being so long-winded. I was trying to do a quick answer. A quick answer to some of these questions, but I will go back to one, conclude with 17, but by laying the base for what I think is the representation, okay, of the questions that I have been asked to answer. Now, after 21, you come to 22. 22 says the shock of the hour. Judgment has absolutely entered the house. And even babies, mothers who are pregnant, will give birth, short birth, yes, to their babies. And then it speaks about the terrible judgment and shock of the hour. 23 is the believers. And then it guides the believers on how they should be attentive to their duties and the moral training and their prayers. And all of those things which are like the mortar to the bricks of a building and to remain in a solid wall. Then 24, we've already rehearsed it. 24, and then followed by 25, which is Farrakhan, meaning he is the last hope. And we must be bearers of witness, not by what we say, but by what we do. Putting our Islam into practice is the way. Now that I have said all of that, let me go back quickly. What is the blessing of standing in the house that DuPont built and defeating them in their own house? I would like to just deal with the wording as I give the answer. The house that DuPont built. Okay, DuPont is part of a collective mind and people, who are like the rich corporate America. Is that what I understand? Okay. And that there was a saying that the Savior came and he wanted to push them into the sea. Well, they used to sing a song in the East, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, as young men going around in a circle. Okay, and as they went around in a circle, they would say this song. Take me to America. Take me into the sea, where I pray, my God, that we can push them. That is the DuPonts and all the other names of these rich Rothschild. See, I'm not from here. I want you to know that. I don't speak the English language. I speak another language. And we won't go into that right now. But sometimes my pronunciation, and some people say accent, they say, where does that come from? And I was born in Detroit. Wow. Black Bottom, Detroit. Okay? So I was a revolutionary when I came into birth. And it looked like everybody with a revolutionary spirit I would hang out with. It's true. Okay. So then, C. What state has the name C on it? Tennessee. Tennessee. What is in Tennessee? And in the neighboring state? Where is Fort Knox? Okay. And how far away is that from Tennessee?
Right at the line. You can pass
Exactly.
the line.
Exactly. So, if that is meaning literally a sea, or the part of the breaking of their power is connected in those states. You see that? Because they got the gold. Or it might be all gone. But it is our gold that was promised to us when the trader made an interpretation that we would receive gold. Did we receive gold? No. The trader made an interpretation, right?
Yes.
So we need to lock in reparations with what they promised us when they took us into slavery. And we don't want paper money. We want the gold. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said we would go back on the gold standard after the breaking of the power. Because when Master Farad Muhammad came, they had already come off, or were in the process of coming off the gold standard. Now, what does it feel like defeating them in their own house? Only if Allah's with me, only if Allah's with us, we can know what that feeling is. And when we see everything breaking away down the tube for this country, and if we're standing and we're still on the basis of our original teaching, then we could feel very happy. I pray, my God, that I will live to see The devils being pushed into hell. That's in our assignment. Okay. The blessing of reading the Quran 52 times a year is very powerful. Because as I read over and over, just like our lessons, you see something else and something else. And this process of reading did not occur 7 days a week until after I learned about the 19-based code in the Holy Quran. So I myself withdrew from the computerologist and the scientist from Egypt that had made this discovery in his computer. And I said to him, no, he asked me. I was with my family, and we went down to Tucson, Arizona, to his mosque. And because I had gotten a word, they said, you need to go down and meet this man because he's using mathematics. And all I could remember is the messenger said, mathematics is Islam, and Islam is mathematics, so I wanted to know what had he discovered that would be mathematical. So, not to go too long into the whole story, but he asked me this question in 1980. That's when we first met, January. I think it was January 26. Then, just before that meeting, the Arab calendar went into the 15th century of the Hijrah on November 1979. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the judgment would come at that marker stone within 4 or so years after his departure. We were looking, as they did, the early Muslims were looking for the destruction right then and there in those 30s. They were preparing for that. But the journey is long. But the evidence and the truth is true, but you don't know, we don't know, like traveling with the wise man, when it's going to happen. Exactly the date. Because if the enemy were to know the exact date, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, okay, they could prepare for that year or for that date. And he said some of the scientists are pretty close. He was referring to those in the Quran, the Quranic scholars, that they've come close to the time, but God will not reveal it until the time. Now, if in 1979, if you look around the world, revolutionary new leaders came into power in 1979. That was the beginning of African revolutionary leaders, new brand of leaders coming in to power. There was another revolutionary band of leaders coming into Afghanistan. There was the rise of Saddam Hussein, 1959, 79. So all of these are studies for us to become more conscious and fully prepared and see what elements are taking place as they lead up to the final end. So from that point on, he asked this question. He said, do you know what this number 19 means? Because he, in his studies, didn't have all the answers. He just knows what Allah was revealing to him inside of the Quran. So I told him, I said, I really can't give you an answer right now. I don't know what the 19 means. However, just prior to my meeting, how Allah prepares us. I had opened to the Holy Quran in 1978 while I and my family were in the Bay Area. And I read the Quran all the time, but not chapters per day, once a week. And I opened the Quran, and it was Surah 75. And that is the resurrection. And that was the same year that I said in my mind, if I put a 19 in front of it, it would give me 1979. I knew nothing about the 19 code. It was just mental. And I said, wow, 1975, the departure of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So I looked for further proof, and on the one side of Maulana Muhammad Ali is the name of the chapter 75, and on the other side where I stopped when that thought came was verse 9, when it said the sun and the moon would come together, and it would be like an eclipse or something, and it said the name of the Messiah or the Mahdi would be revealed. So then I played with numbers and I said, okay, if I prefix this as a date, marker stone, I said, what if I put 19 in front of all of the surahs of the Holy Quran? Would it give me a calendar reading of the century in which the Mahdi made his appearance? And so then after I prefixed every surah 19, then that was when the meeting came up. So I already had gotten a kind of precursor glimpse, into 19, but not knowing that it was the multiples of letters and etc. So when he asked me that question, I said, no, I can't say right now, but as I leave you today, and I will tell you, he had the highest respect and honor for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because his father, who was a great Sufi guide or saint, as they would call them, had more followers in Africa and in the Emirates. And their teaching, of course, is a lot different from the Orthodox Muslims. They try to go deeper, into the spiritual side. But part of their program of this particular order was that everyone had to train into some capacity as a professional. So he became the state chemist of the state of Arizona. That was part of his job description. Plus he was working in Islam. So that gives us an idea how important it is for us not just to preach, but to get out and offer service, do something with our Islam. Yes? Okay. Now, I told him, give me a while. I'm going to not visit anymore. I've heard what you have had to say. And I said, I'm going to study on my own independently. And then we may meet again in a year or so. And so in my study of the 19, I found that it was directly linked with the alignment of the sun, the moon, and the earth, which is based on a calendric system that is used by the Jews to revise or change their calendar. They use the number 19. Okay? Then I went on to study and found many relations to the moon movement in cycles of 19 that produce eclipses so many years. There's an eclipse and it's 18 point something years. And then the 19 pops up. So when the sun and the moon come together and there is an eclipse, but the deeper and deeper you go, and after what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, mathematics is the key to the universe. Mathematics is the key to unlocking the wisdom that we have inside of each one, because even our body parts and the length of our feet and hands and everything are coordinates of mathematical codes. And 19 plays a very important part in that. That's another study for another time. But yes, indeed, reading through has brought me tremendous, just like what we did today. The 17 joined to, the 18, and it might sound to people coming from the outside that, wow, what is that? But those are the numbers, and those were exactly spelled out in the assignment. So every day, Allah is revealing to you, do you see?
Yes, ma'am.
By going and using the mathematical language. Okay. When Minister Farrakhan departs from us, how can we avoid the chaos and confusion of his departure? Follow the instructions that he's giving us right now, today. And we're going to have that demonstration in the upper room. What process would you give to the MDT and GCC in utilizing one of the units to become self-sufficient? I gather what you mean is how they would use those units for economic benefit. And if you had a choice of one of those units, where would you fit? Okay, in being proficient, we talked about that this morning. It's amazing how we would use the 7 units to become economically sufficient and independent so that we could carry on business out of these units. So we may talk on that a little bit later too. Would you elaborate on the importance of the 7 units? There we are. That's double, so I've answered it kind of both. As they relate to our promise, yes. Problem number 13. That will be part of a presentation that we will see in the upper room. As one who has intimate knowledge of the years just preceding the departure of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, what, if any, parallels do you see now and would share with us? As you know, over the years, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan was suffering with prostate cancer. And in that process, he has been treated, analyzed, and operated on by a series of physicians. Is that true? The last major surgery was done in Washington, D.C. at Harvard University. And we all, Howard, not Harvard, yes, Howard. And they had a press conference that they held with those who wanted to know more details from those doctors. And I believe it was a group of 4 or 5. One of those doctors died last year. Heart attack, right? He was the head of the group of physicians who worked on the minister. And the question I remember raising when they held that conference, press conference after, was why was he seated with such an extraordinary amount of those seeds, radiation seeds that would go into the body to try to eradicate. Because 40, which he first received, was quite a lot and was considered to be normal, but it was in the experimental stage. So they radiated 200, I believe, 40. So 200 more, which was really experimenting on him. Because most people did not expect that he was going to survive that.
That's right.
That operation. Because what had happened, these radiated seeds began to destroy the intestinal.
Okay.
And then there was burning, like a kind of, what would you say? Like not tumor, but ulcer. So it became ulcerated and burned a part. So they had to go in and figure out how to save some of that tissue or bring that tissue to a way that he could live at the best with the sacks and bags that he described to us. Sad. Now the ongoing study of his condition does show that there was something within, perhaps the mind, the procedure, maybe they were not up to the job, maybe they had been tampered with by our open enemy, God knows. But there's ongoing research as to why they did the kind of surgery that they did. Okay? And so the minister is still experiencing a great deal of pain in the area and has had to make another trip back to Washington, D.C. recently, maybe last year, or not last week.
That's right.
So with my husband, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it was the medical profession that was working on him. Do you understand? And took him from one place to another place, and that's a whole big story that I will tell one day, because I was a witness of it. Taking him from Mexico with IVs in his arm, coming out of a coma, to get him to the airport in Mexico City, to fly him into cold influenza weather in Chicago in January. And while he was in the hospital, he came out of it. He was fine. And he thought, when he awakened, that he was in Mexico. And he says, "Where am I?" And then they told him, "No, sir, you're not in Mexico. You're in Chicago." And he was like, "Oh." Because he had already revealed to me while we were in Mexico that there was a plot to take his life. But he would not tell me who specifically was a part of the plot, because I'm sure he knew that I would say things or do something that would not have allowed what they did to happen, you know? Yes. So it was quite a torturous scene. And even my travel permits from the Mexican government, along with my children, were torn up so that I would not be able to go back with them on the plane. So we had to take a commercial flight out of Mexico City that night, arriving in Chicago very late, going directly to the hospital. And then I was confronting Wadathurin. And he was down at the desk. He calls up to the room where they had taken the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the words were, "I'm very sorry, but only the immediate family is allowed." And so at that time, they didn't know what immediate meant from any other term. All they knew is that they felt that they were in charge, for good or bad reasons. So now we're back to Minister Farrakhan. The parallels, hospitals, medical people, all of this is now around him because, according to the Minister Farrakhan, there was a gentleman in St. Louis who told about a party that the medical profession was putting on, and inside of that meeting there were certain women, among them some black women, who heard a conversation being discussed by some doctors, saying she heard the name Elijah Muhammad. And they said, "We got rid of that problem non-violently," which means that they either injected something or put something there that they thought was going to bypass God. Silly people. So he was made to appear that he was dead, that he was taken. And he had already pre-warned us, don't, if you see a body, if you see a funeral, or various things that they were going to do, don't believe it. But we had to be tested, because when the real test comes, it looks so real that you say, oh, he's gone. How could we have medical records saying that he had a heart congestive, what do we call it, diagnosis for death? And he had been suffering with diabetes. And he was on a program to get the control of the diabetic situation. He felt safe in Mexico because, like the Cuban medical program, they study internal medicine, surgery, but they also have homeopathic training, and the training without drugs and using the natural herbs, so that a doctor, if you walk into his office, he can give you two alternatives. And that is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad experienced. The doctor was one of the top heart specialists in the country. And the first thing he said, "Would you please put in front of me the medications that you're taking?" And it was about 12 different medications. And he said, "The first thing I'm going to do is," and he took his hand and he scrapped away at least 6 or 7 of the drugs. And then he went to work, and we had a nurse, and everyone's attitude was so beautiful, because when you're working with your own people and indigenous people, they have not lost that home training and that cultural, aspect of family. So he felt safe. And I could go on and tell you other stories. But the bottom line, he was forced to leave a place in which he felt healing and comfort to a place that was totally cold. And the manner that they run the medical system in the hospitals, you don't know if you're going to get in and get out.
That's right.
Now, the Honorable Minister right now is still doing the nation's work and business as he will always do that. He did hint to us that he was not sure how much longer that he would be among us. And he said, no, I'm not talking about dying or death, but it's dangerous because they're setting so many traps for him, you see, that only Allah would be able to get him out of it. And so I knew the plan that was set for my husband, because it was personages that he identified as having power over the fire, power over the elements, like those 7 powerful angels. And I believe that we definitely saw one come to the dinner table just prior, in the same year, 1974. And he appeared at the hospital. But he never spoke a word because he had an assignment. And he didn't bother conversations, we didn't talk, nobody gave him greetings. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad described him, this is a very quiet person. He came to the dinner table. He did not say a word, but his face was focused and it looked like he was in a meditative state the whole time. When at the hospital, he stood at the foot of his bed, and in my view, I saw it, he was communicating mentally with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And that was the last stages before they announced that he was dead and died at the Mercy Hospital from congestive heart failure. So I don't know what condition the minister will be in upon the heels of his departure. But the medical profession had a plan, and God had a plan. And he is the best of planners. So have that faith, not to worry about anything, whether the minister stays a while longer or departs. Know that he's in the hands of Allah. And he told us at the dinner, in fact, someone reminded me that he mentioned me in reference to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's words to me in the hospital, take refuge in Allah. And so that's where all of us would take refuge. Thank you. All right. Now, we said that. Okay, I think we're here. In the original instructions to the laborers in the Supreme Wisdom, they are numbered 1 through 7. The 8 is missing. Okay, see, 8, that day will bear thy Lord's throne of power. Getting behind the 8 ball is not a very good position to be in, right? Okay, and if you turn the 8 this way, it represents infinity, right? And it also represents an ancient Egyptian lore, you know, like the Eye of Horus and all of that, okay? But the reason 8 is missing is because whoever transcribed it and put it in our lesson book did not put the number that corresponds, okay, to the number 8. It exists, but they crowded the words of 8 and 7 together. And I have the old copy of the Messenger's 13 paragraphs that I found pressed between the leaves of a book. So he was telling me all the time, this is your assignment, stay on it while I am away. That is going to be the key to moving you along, and all those who follow those same instructions to be safe. But anyway, I have the original Supreme Wisdom 13 paragraphs and lessons before they got into the book. And so it's somewhere that it states, I want it, but I don't want to lose time looking for it. Because it tells you, when you go back to your lessons, you can see exactly where it cut off and where it was put in 1. But the 8 is the separation. Okay, I don't have it right in front of me, but you have that part. And so I will leave with your minister here a copy of the original 13 questions and answers, and then you can read it and correct it with the believers. And also yourself, Tynetta, is responsible, you know, to a mosque or study group.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, back. I was looking for it, and now here we go. All right. Has the messenger ever contacted you since he left in 1975? Yes. Several occasions. From his departure in 1975 through a year after that, through 2 or 3 more years after that, through the 80s, and the very latest contact that I received was in the National House at the Palace in Chicago just prior to, no, after the Millions More movement in October, so that's pretty close. It was the end of, somewhere in November. It was the same day or evening prior to the minister receiving the vehicle, of the emergency vehicle as a gift that was sent. So if you can trace that back in the final call, and you can see the date line, and when he met with the brothers and sisters out of North Carolina, I believe, brought the emergency vehicle to him. It was the night before. There was nobody in the house. Not even a mouse, no. And nobody, no member of the family, the minister, nobody stayed that night in the palace. So I literally was alone. And somewhere in the early morning, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad appeared so that I could see just like the side of his face. But he had his ears, hands cropped like over his ears, and he was near my ear as if he was trying to whisper or tell me something. And he was guiding me through some portions of the Holy Quran. But when I awakened, I know what he told me in the vision, but when I came out of it, and it's still been troubling me, what part, of the book was he trying to show me? It was some verses. And I keep concentrating, hasn't come back yet. I guess maybe it has to come at the proper time. But then he lastly put on my mind the importance of prayer. And so that is what I'm saying as a part of the answer, that we have to be constant in our prayer. We have to be constant in bringing God to remembrance in order to get through this dark period. Okay? Has the messenger, 70 years extension of time. Did this extension start 1930 or 1934 when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad left? And what are signs of the end of the extension of time? We kind of covered that in the introduction, that it would start with the departure of Master Fard Muhammad in 1934, and it does also, as he gave us 2004 and 2005, that would hit the year that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad departed 1 year after the Savior in 1935. Okay? By the way, I need to ask a question. Was Wilmington one of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's stopover points when he was going up and down the East Coast and New Jersey, Philadelphia, and the rest? Yes, it was.
Yes,
I kind of thought that.
Yes, ma'am.
See, that's that baby Jesus, okay? In all of these areas, okay. Now, what aspect of the wives of Prophet Muhammad have you lived or fulfilled? I really don't know how to answer that, except what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad prepared me. And because the second question is, what books and titles did you get? Because I was always an avid reader and I loved researching, what the messenger would say, then I'd start reading books. Then I would bring back to him, look what I found in this book. It's just like a school child, very excited. And you have the master teacher, the master professor there. So I was trying to see if I was correctly reading materials that he would approve of. And he would always take mine. He said, oh, that's very good, thank you. And he would put it inside of his vest pocket, into his jacket pocket. But he told me about the books, some of them that he read on the life of the Prophet. And that was William Weir's book called The Life of the Prophet Muhammad. And he would tell me, it's very interesting. You remind me of the young wife of the Prophet who came from Mecca. And I was always, even when they described this one in books, I laughed because I don't know. They would describe her as bringing her playthings, and I would always have a bag. I still carry lots of bags, but this bag, you know, had some of my favorite things that I liked to play with. Seriously, on my own. I didn't play them with anyone else, but I liked collecting, you know, little dolls and things like that. So I had dolls and things that sometimes on my off time, you know, that I would have fun. I used to love to working with the young teenagers and the young people in Chicago, and I would do the same thing I did with my children. I would take them through a series of kind of like babysitting games, but they were always games on Islam. And so I would have them, we created little plays, we would create songs, we created our own, you know, like little music, so you could say that was the play side of me. But I loved to be with the children at that time, and so that particular person was described as being like that, and being very kind of like creative, and, you know, and so much was entrusted to her in helping to preserve the history that the companions were called upon to witness to the communities and to nurture the communities into communities of believers. Now, and books, I already mentioned a few books that I was guided to read. And then, will your articles in the final call be put in a book form? I have been asked that throughout the years, and I am currently working with the help of some of the staff at the Final Call newspaper to help me to do that and to do an interview when I return back to Chicago, where they want to do what you're doing, asking various questions so we can put it into the history of our nation, so that when things go amok, you have information from the companions of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad while we're still here to refer to and say, oh, I think Mother Tynetta said such and such, Brother Jibril said such and such and such, Brother Akbar Muhammad said such and such and such. Yes. Yes. So that really has to be done, because I'm not the kind of person that does something and then I want a lot of credit and I want people to hoorah. I just keep moving to the next, and I hardly look back, and they'll say, Mother Tynetta, you spoke so-and-so and you never sent us the tape. I said, oh, okay. I'll send the tape back, because they wanted to kind of put a package together of some of my lectures, you know, around the country, and I'm very poor in that, unfortunately. I really am. And will the 10th system, The Brain, a curriculum guide for the Nation of Islam, be put in book form? We're working on all of that. Yes. You have referred to the butterfly to describe life and transformation. Would you comment on why such a beautiful insect would, after such a tremendous metamorphosis, yes, only be given a 2 to 4 week lifespan? Well, I don't know why it's been given only a 2 to 4 week lifespan, but you know the butterfly is not a butterfly until it becomes a worm. And so it's the least of things that you would think that would sprout wings and fly. And that was used in our last year presentation in Philadelphia. And it also appears on the list of the 9 commissions as the basis for the 9 commissions to see that we can how do you say that word? Metamorphosize from nothing, a little cocoon we grow into, and then yuck, you know, and then they break out of that and we become a wonderful butterfly. So I think the meaning is that we move from stage to stage, from nothing into something. And once we become something, we dematerialize again. And then another butterfly comes into existence, and on again. But everybody starts from an humble beginning to become a beautiful butterfly. And it says, Jesus said, I scooped up from the earth a scoop of mud or clay. He said, and then he changed it into a bird that can fly. So a bird has wings, and a bird has many other features that are absolutely beautiful in harmony with the divine. All insects do, and most mammals do, until we start tampering with them. And we too, can be the same. All right. Now, approximately a year ago, you had a series of articles that were entitled, "They Think That I'm Going to Die." Would you describe that time period and the relevance it has for this time? Yes, very quickly. Prior to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad being taken from Mexico, there were periods when he would go into a coma and have to have the IVs that was administered by a nurse. And during one of those periods, he asked me to close the door and lock it because he didn't want anybody to come into the room. And he laid there with his hand sort of like behind his head. And then he said very, very seriously, he said, "They think I'm going to die." Then that was hinting to me that even though I may look like I'm out of here, or be in a coma, or be in like a sleep-like condition, that I will come out of it, don't worry, at any of the signs that you may see. But he was telling me how they were thinking and plotting. So once he's out of the way, this is what we'll do. See? Not knowing the higher principles of the spiritual knowledge that he had and the base of Master Farad Muhammad's magnificent scientific skill in reversing the cells of the body, if he so chose to, is that right? And bring us out of it and put us in a new life altogether. So, next question. We're almost made it. Yes. Yes, and I told you the time period. That was in Mexico prior to them bringing him to Chicago. And the relevance for today is that we are witnessing in our brother something similar that may happen in his life, and not for us to worry, but just stay on the road to discovery. Okay, when the minister departs, the dropping of the leaflets, the angels on the corners, the Muslim sons helping us, and the teaching in 15-minute shifts, does this take place during that departure? Well, none of us know how Almighty Allah is going to call his troops into action. But we do know that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us that there would be dropping of leaflets that would give approximately 10 days to everyone in this country who belongs or is a national of another country, and that they would be dropped in their languages. So you can imagine all the languages that the ethnic or foreign groups have here, telling them to get back to their countries. The angels standing on every other corner that he described are also separating the people in a frantic move. I guess that would be some of the last things that we would hope not to have to see. But they will ask questions simple. Are you with the Muslims, or are you with America? Are you with Elijah Muhammad, or are you with... And then, depending upon your answer, you will be told where to go. And that separation is taking place as we speak. The Muslim sons helping us. Yes, that has long been in our lessons. And no details on when they would come in, but they would recognize the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because Master Farad Muhammad had an ongoing link to the Muslim sons at the time that he came in 1930, and the sign of it is that he spoke with the then President Herbert Hoover. And Herbert Hoover attended the opening of the Arlington portion of Washington's museum and archives crossing over the Potomac. You get into Virginia, and he was a full-blown Mason. He was a Shriner. He was a degree person who wore all the paraphernalia of the Muslims, and they show his skirt, and they have rooms, the throne room, And on the throne room in that particular building, there are 13 chairs, and on a table there is the Holy Quran. So when they reach the highest degree, they learn the name of Allah. See? So there are those in high places in the government who know who we are, and at a certain time, they will make themselves manifest. And that is why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, one day will come when you may have an opportunity to get even with the white man, for his treatment of us, like if they're absolutely caroused and handcuffed, which looks like it might be kind of soon, and put on pickup trucks. We don't have anything to do with that. That's their own people that will rise up against them, you see? Like the Minutemen, their protestation to the government policies, right? So all we have to do is join in with our Latino family, because they are not only equal members, but they are another part of the team to reinforce as a protection of the brother to the sister, and the sister to the brother, and sister to sister, and brother to brother. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us early on, he said, study Spanish.
That's right.
And he didn't tell us all the reasons why we should learn Spanish, but can you imagine you're linking with your brothers and sisters, they only speaking Spanish, you don't even know any Spanish, some of us, or most of us, but we were told to learn Spanish, you see? Now you see what's happening. May Day and all of the things that are going on, and they're standing up in huge numbers, and many of their members are members of the Nation of Islam. All over the country you find a brother and sister from Puerto Rico. You'll find a brother and sister from Mexico. Am I right? And then we even have some Asians who are members of the Nation of Islam. So they are, so they are all members of the original nation, and they deserve the respect and the honor, because they come in on a timeline that God has already made. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said back in the 30s, there was a Mexican family that was a member of the Nation of Islam. However, at that time, only the wife could attend, and her husband could not attend at that time to become a full-grown member. But they were told that time will come, and our brothers and sisters will come to join us. But first, this teaching is to prepare the little black baby who was put down so low into the mud of civilization, because he said, once you start teaching our other members this teaching, they'll wake up in 6 months. And it takes us 70 plus years, and we're still dragging up there, So, a little blood injection from us, and overnight they're marching and out there fighters, for their people too. And we say, oh, it's not all over. Million-Man March, day of absence, not spending the dollars in the commerce, right? Stay away from work. So now part 2 comes when our Hispanic community is speaking the same language. Day of absence, don't go to school. Isn't that amazing? So we have a lot to learn, and we have to catch up really quick, because the time that we have known will soon know no more. 15-minute bullet shots. Well, I was so tired last night from my long journey from the West Coast to here, and I turned trying to catch up with some news, and I happened to pass the History Channel, which is one of my favorite channels. And they were talking about the trains and the history of the trains. And then they went to Japan. Did anybody see it? Okay. And then they went to Japan, and they called those fast-moving trains that go up to 168 to almost 200 miles per hour, bullet. Those were the exact words that the messenger said about the Whistle Stop Tour. That we would be on a fast-moving train, that it would be like a bullet, moving from one place to the other. So only thing that I could see that can move 15 minutes to a city giving the final warnings would be an object that's flying. Yes? That might be from the mother's wheel, because that's the only kind of dynamics, aerial dynamics, that has been created that can move 15 minutes. We don't have those kind of trains over here. The bullet trains, But that's an example of high-speed technology that can get people and transportation quickly from one place to another. I hope I answered that question. And during the departure, I can't tell you how it's all going to work out, but we have the dynamics, so all we have to do is just read my lips. No. We'll get it all together. All right. Final. Whew. Prior to the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March, a sister had a vision of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He told her he would be completely in charge that day. What does this mean to you? Well, it just so happened that after the Millions More movement and the announcement of the vision that the sister had, and I know who that sister is, and that she said that he would be in charge that day, and that she saw him there on the grounds, meaning that he would be in charge. He's taking over, you see, the control of what's going on in the government. So he is in charge. Now, I had a vision leading up to this Savior's Day in which I saw my husband completely changed, physically, the body, everything. And he had come to Mosque Marianne to announce and give us some further instructions. That's what it was in the vision. He was dressed all in white. He didn't come with a robe, or dazzling headgear. He came just as a perfectly formed man in a white suit with big chunk of hair. Maybe that's why he didn't have anything on to see that his hair had grown back, because he had the receding and little balds before he left. And so I saw full black hair. And it was a kind of hair that was kind of thick. It was another texture of hair. I can't quite describe it. It was like coarse but straight, but it wasn't like silky, wavy hair. It was thick, and very, very clearly I found myself near him in Mosque Marianne, and I was so shocked. I said, oh my God. I said, that's my husband. And I got so nervous. I was so nervous because he was so serious. It was no play. And he had 2 documents in his hand. He had what appeared to be the Holy Quran, and he also had a document that was not easy to read, or that I couldn't read. And maybe it was something new, I don't know. But it looked like some very serious, detailed document in writing. And when I realized that I was standing near, I got so nervous, because as I receded to go out of the area where he was, and it was blocked on the area of the podium of Mosque Marianne where the empty tomb is behind, where the rug comes out, when the minister comes through there. And when I turned, I saw Minister Farrakhan, and I saw a few members of the E-team, but I only saw his face clearly. I don't know who the other brothers were. And I went to him, and I was so nervous, and in my excitement, I said, Brother Minister, the messenger is back. And the minister was looking straight forward, his gaze intent in the direction of the Savior. And then I went back to that area where I had met him in the vision, in the dream, and I said, say something. This isn't me, mine. I said, do something. So I said, oh, is there anything I can do to help? And he said, and this has been mind-boggling to me, he said, I want the papers and the deeds to the Smithsonian. So then that started me researching what Smithsonian was all about. So we have a team that's working in Washington, D.C. to try to find out, because this is the only thing we got off the internet, and I did not know this. Smithsonian is behind 19 of the museums that's on the mall. From the Natural History Museum, to the Aeronautic NASA, the space program, and other natural history, and many others that are on the mall. And I said, and they have 7 research centers around the world, though it wasn't indicated in that particular internet paper where these research centers are. But in it, it has those persons that serve on the board. And they have to be 1, 2 congressmen, and from the Senate sit on the board directing the Smithsonian. And the Vice President Cheney's name is on there. So it's a whole governmental link to keeping up, I guess, with the latest research, right? So that they are scientists and they can be informed of all the new technologies, all the new developments, so they can inform the government leaders what is taking place on the planet in all those categories. Then, next part that we read is that it is the Treasury Department of the United States government that pays them, they're on the payroll of the state treasury, and the chancellor or head of the Department of Justice is also there. So whatever else we are going to find or whatever else you want to research, please do that and be free to share your information and your findings. The other thing is that the name Smith Son or Son was a very aristocratic Britisher who came to the country in the 1800s. And he wanted to bequeath to the United States government an ongoing research department to keep them informed, knowledge base. He passed, and he passed that on to his son to carry that out. And his son made all of the preparation for the establishment of Smithsonian the way it is today. And he could be one of the Muslim sons. That's when I first visited Smithsonian. That was my first thought because of the name Son on there and Smith, Son. So we don't know what Allah has prepared and why He has directed us to study, because He being in charge on that day means He's about to take over. And that to carry us with Him, we have to be more studious and do our research so that we will have knowledge of the different moves that are about to make. And if the Muslim sons are about ready to serve us in any way, we have to be disciplined, righteous, and bringing in the seeding of a new government, because this government has failed. And we are the top of the truncated pyramid on their dollar bill. So once we can break the code of secrecy on how He has ruled us, you see what I'm saying? Then we have our day in court, divine court. And if we know the basis of how He's ruling us, then we would be much greater defenders when that time comes in the Bible, where it says, don't worry about what you will say. They will bring you up in front of tribunals and courts, because it has to be all in our head, the knowledge that we have been given to win. Okay, thank you. Now, if you have enough patience, no, if you have enough time, I know it's hot, we do have an invitation to go into the upper room, and we're going to see a presentation